Have you truly understood the concept of nirvana? Is what you know about nirvana complete and accurate? Take 10 minutes today to discover what the Buddha really said about nirvana. What is nirvana? A distinctive aspect of the Buddha that we need to grasp is his use of emptiness, or śūnyatā, to describe the ultimate experience. Other spiritual masters have spoken of fullness to articulate their spiritual experiences. Why did the Buddha choose this seemingly negative term? It's critically important for your spiritual growth and not for philosophical reasons or darsana. I'm not concerned with philosophical issues. I discuss matters of practical value. The deceptiveness of positive terms. The concept of fullness, ideas of God or Ishvara, of perfection, of the absolute, or paramartha, of the ultimate. These are all positive terms. These terms perplexed the Buddha as he recognized the deceptiveness of the human mind, or manas. Other mystics unintentionally used these positive nouns because that was their experience. Why dwell on past sufferings? Why not speak of what is occurring? They spoke from their personal experiences. However, over the centuries, these have been exploited by the cunning of the human mind. For the crafty mind, or kutila manas, the idea of fullness and these beautiful names became a reason to satisfy the ego, or ahamkara. I have become God. I have reached the absolute. I am united with the ultimate. I have achieved complete liberation, or moksha. This becomes the focus of all our statements. The difficulty is that you cannot use the ultimate experience to satisfy the ego. The ego is an obstacle. It cannot become a bridge. Positive terms have been misused. Instead of destroying the ego, they have become decorations for it. God becomes a target and you must reach it. You become greater than God. The reason is that the target cannot be bigger than you. That is easy to understand. Liberation and the ultimate nature of nirvana. All religions fail because of the innocence of mystics. The Buddha understood this better than anyone. He was the most educated, the wisest, and became a spiritual master. In the entire history of the world, no one can compare to him because he saw how the innocence of the mystics was exploited by the cunning mind. Thus, he referred to the ultimate as emptiness, void, shunya, zero, or sunya. How can the ego use nothingness to boast? God or Ishvara can be used as a target, but emptiness ties its hands. Who wants to become nothing? It's a fear. Everyone wants to avoid becoming zero at all costs. Yet Buddha used it to describe the ultimate. The term he used is nirvana. He chose a beautifully perfect word, and he stunned philosophers and thinkers by using nirvana to express the ultimate experience. Nirvana means extinguishing the flame. Other mystics say that you become luminous, as if 1,000 suns have risen within you, as if a star-filled sky resides in your heart. These ideas awaken the ego. It wants stars to dance in its chest so it can shine before the world. Buddha cut right to the heart of the matter when he said that the ultimate experience was like blowing out a candle. The small flame of a candle casts a tiny pool of light, and when it's extinguished, you are immersed in vast darkness. Many told him, "If you keep teaching this way, no one will dare follow you. Who wants darkness? Are you mad?" He said that the ultimate experience is the great death, or mahamarana. While others spoke of eternal life, or amartattva, he spoke of permanent death. But he wasn't contradicting himself. For 42 years, he unrelentingly challenged the geniuses of the East and never conceded to the ego. He knew well that what he called darkness was so bright that it seemed like darkness. What do you think happens when 1,000 suns rise within you? Is it too bright? You'd feel blinded. You'd feel utterly dark. Look at the sun for a few seconds and you can't see. If 1,000 suns rise within your mind, or chitta, you would feel darkness, not illumination. It takes time to adjust. You must wait for your eyes to strengthen slowly. Then darkness becomes light. Emptiness becomes fullness. But he didn't talk about that. He never said darkness would turn to light, and he never mentioned that death would resurrect later because he understood the ego's trickery. If he said that, it would reassure itself. Then there's no problem. Our goal remains unchanged. We just have to endure one dark night of the soul. and ultimately the light will return as if 1,000 suns. The Buddha and the philosophy of emptiness. Buddha had to deny the existence of God, or Ishvara. Not that he was against God, a person like him couldn't be against God. But if Buddha didn't accept God, others' bellicosity about God was also inconsequential. His assertion paved a way for humanity. He is the soul of our being. But he didn't oppose God. He denied the ego, and he didn't give the self, or Atman, a chance to rise, because being without God was better. What we've learned is although he was the first to use negative terms, he must have been extraordinarily charismatic. Millions followed in his footsteps. His unobstructed eloquence, or anavarana, convinced his listeners. Why meditate or dhyana, practice asceticism or tapas, renounce familial bonds, eat once a day, only to end up as nothingness, becoming zero or sunya? Then it's better not to meditate or practice asceticism. But one thing is certain, when becoming zero, there will be no one left to suffer. What's so special about that? He convinced people, not because of his philosophy, but because of his enlightenment, or bodhi, his charisma. He helped people to experience for themselves so they could understand. Emptiness, or śūnyatā, is only valid for the world, for the ego, but for the human essence, it is richness, fullness. There are many reasons why Buddha's ideas disappeared from India, and negative terminology is the most significant. Indian mystics, scholars, and mystics all used positive terminology. Thousands of years before Buddha, India was accustomed to positive ideas. Negative words were unheard of. They followed him because of his profound impact, but after his death, his followers diminished and disappeared because his followers weren't intellectually convinced. They could feel the truth through his person. If he can be content in such emptiness, if being zero is so blissful, if without a soul he is so graced, we are ready to follow his steps. He must have some magic, some secret. But philosophically, he's hard to convince you because your ego finds nothing appealing. The legacy of Buddha's teachings. Buddhism thrived in China, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia, except India, because there Buddhism abandoned negative terms. They reverted to positive terms like enlightenment or bodhi, the ultimate, or paramartha, the absolute or absoluta perfection. They had to compromise. Thus, for me, Buddhism died with Buddha. What we know of Buddhism today has nothing to do with Buddha because Buddhism has abandoned his most fundamental contribution, the negative approach. I understand both traditions, positive and negative, but I'm luckier than Buddha. He knew how the ego could exploit positive words, and that's his greatest contribution. He discarded the positive to emphasize the negative, knowing many would not follow because it's not very appealing to the ego. Both traditions have opened up for us. I know how the positive method was exploited by the ego, and I know what happened to the negative approach. After Buddha's death, his disciples had to compromise. They conceded precisely what Buddha had rejected. Thus, I've tried to explain both approaches, emptiness in relation to the world and fullness in relation to spiritual experience. This method includes both, discussing what must be discarded and analyzing the benefits to be gained. Such a synthesis has not been thoroughly applied until now. Mahavira, Shankara, Moses, Muhammad all used the positive approach. Buddha used the negative. I embrace both without seeing any contradiction. If you understand me clearly, you can admire the beauty of both traditions. But you must avoid letting the ego exploit, and don't fear death, darkness, and emptiness. They are not contradictory. Like a glass of water that's half full, and you say it's either half full or half empty. Both are wrong because from one perspective it's empty, from another it's full. Half your life belongs to the secular, the other half to the sacred. It's unfortunate, but there's no other way. So we must use the same terms for both the secular and the sacred. Therefore, you must be vigilant. Following the secular will lose the essentials. If you pursue the secular, you will see the emptiness of the spiritual. If you think about it in the sacred, you will see it's full.